you. So thank you very much. Thank you all for coming on a Friday afternoon. I think the lines out there were longer than for the lunch line. So one thing I like to do during my talks is tell some stories. So I'll sort of intermix some stories in here along with sort of the formal set of slides here, but hopefully you'll get something out of all those different dimensions of it. So just a little bit of how I got here as an astrophysicist. I always tell people an astronomer is always working with data. So my day jobs working at NASA was with data, and my night job was with data. So I was always living around data. And about 20 years ago, the explosion of data in astronomy was astronomical. And it really changed the way we thought about how we managed and did exploration on data as a scientific community of astronomers. But as I looked around, I realized that the same kind of explosion of data was happening all across the world in every business, every industry, in healthcare. Internet of Things was sort of born with the internet, obviously, which is now putting information and data out online. So all this data and information was at everyone's fingertips, and they're trying to learn what to do with all this data. So I didn't know quite what to do, because most of my day job experience was data management, which is organizing data, much like a library function, telling people how to find stuff, but not necessarily doing the discovery from it. And so I learned about this thing called data mining. So I didn't quite know what data mining was. It sounded like an interesting combination of two words, data and mining. I never heard those words put together before. But a colleague of mine told me about it, and so I was trying to learn what I could about it. And I think it was about 19 years ago. I sort of remember pretty well this sort of transition moment in my life. I'd spent nearly 20 years doing very traditional astrophysics research, and again, supporting these NASA space missions. But I was trying to learn this new data science thing, and I had a sort of a life-changing experience, which I want to share with you briefly here. And so there was I was working at a NASA facility, which is in Greenbelt, Maryland, called the Goddard Space Flight Center, which is NASA's Center for Excellence in Space and Earth Science Research. And there's lunchtime speakers all the time at a center like that, research scientists, seminars, every day, 2 or 3 times a day, somewhere on this large research center. And so one day, the email come across the wire that there was a speaker from IBM talking about data mining. And I said, oh, here's my chance to find out what data mining is, okay? So I went to this lunchtime seminar. And the room was, much smaller than this, but every seat was taken. And this lady whose name I can't remember now, and I regret to this day I can't remember who she was, but she worked at the IBM Watson Research Lab in New York City. And she started giving this talk on data mining, and she was filling boards, weren't whiteboards, but regular chalkboards, several of them in the room. She was filling these boards with equations, just filling them with equations. And I was thinking, I've had like many dozens of math courses in my life. I don't need this. If this is all data mining is, I'm not getting it. I don't see the point of all this. All right. And so she was just doing this. In hindsight, I think she was playing us. Okay. So I think she would have been a really good stand-up comic, because she was really like playing the audience. She did this, and I swear to God, she was doing it intentionally, because halfway through this hour-long presentation, filling the board with very obscure math that I'm sure very few people in the room sort of really saw the connection between what she was talking about and our roles at NASA, which is to provide research data to the science community for scientific discovery. Okay. Right halfway through this hour-long presentation, she said, now I want to tell you about our summer intern program at IBM. And she pauses. And I swear, I would guess almost everyone in the room had the same thought that I had, like, what the heck? She's going from that to the summer intern program at the IBM. I mean, what a segue. I mean, there's like no connection. Why is she doing this? All right, now I'm a big outreach person. I really love sharing the love of science with younger kids all the way from grade school on up. And so I was game to hear that, but I just didn't understand why she made this ridiculously complex mathematical presentation. But like I said, I think she was playing with us because of the next thing she said. She said, yeah, we have the summer intern program at IBM, and we teach data mining to high school kids in inner city New York. And I'm, again, pause. And I swear I was thinking the same thing everyone else in the room. Like, you have got to be kidding me. You can't be teaching this to inner city New York City high school kids. Who would even come? So she took that pause and a moment, take a deep breath, and then she said, yeah, she read our minds. She said, yeah, we really do this. We really do this, because she could see the doubt on our faces. And so she said, okay, well, what we do is we teach this topic, maybe not these equations, but we teach this topic in the context of the most important thing in the lives of those students. And I'm scratching my head. Okay, I was an Air Force brat. We lived in really small towns and remote places, never in big cities. I have no idea what's the most important thing on the top of mind of an inner city student kid, right? So I'm not getting it. And so she said, what's the most important thing to that inner city student is street basketball. She said, they live and die for street basketball. Before school, during school, after school, that's what they're doing. After dark, before dark, street basketball. So all of a sudden I was saying, okay, I'm getting it now. So she said, what we did at IBM is they created a software product called Scout, which now is called Advanced Scout, and they sold it to every NBA basketball team, every professional basketball team. And they use this software where they actually data mine the play-by-play histories of all the players, all the games, against all the opponents. And so they could basically give this piece of software to a defensive coordinator on an NBA team, and they can determine how their opposing team will respond to different types of situations. A fast break, a 3-on-1, do they take the jump shot, do they go for a layup, do they pass it off? They have all this data, and they mine these data in order to help the teams, coach the teams to success. And fast forward a few years later, I'll still finish this story, I actually heard in the NBA Finals on TV with national sportscasters talking about data mining one day, and I nearly blew my socks off. These sports people were talking about data mining and about the Advanced Scout software and how the Orlando Magic won their first NBA championship using this data mining software. So anyway, I'm starting to get it now. And she said, yeah, the students are so passionate about basketball. When they saw that IBM had this product, they became very excited about learning how it works. So the students buckled down, start learning math and science and how to do this stuff that they were talking about. Well, for me, as a person who really wants to engage younger people in STEM, science and math education early on in their lives, this was really exciting. But what she said next changed my life. What she said next changed my life. I went from being a traditional astrophysics researcher to what I'm doing today. I can stand in front of a business school as an astrophysicist. Like whoever could imagine that, right? She said that the metric of our success, what we use, remember every business has to have metrics of performance, right? The metric for success for their program was how many of the students that go through their summer intern program actually graduate high school. She said those children, I say children, I have grandchildren now, so I guess I can say that, right? Okay, those students would come from pretty difficult, hard schools in inner city New York. Not a very high graduation rate. In fact, the graduation rate from the schools that these students were drawn from was less than 50%. Less than 50% of the students in those high schools actually go to high school graduation, actually get a diploma. The students who go through their program had a 97% graduation rate. And I said, if something is that powerful to change lives, I have got to do that. And at that moment, I set out to make that what I do with my life. And it truly did change me. I spent a few more years at NASA, and I left this wonderful role at NASA, and my friends will joke with me, I took a 50% pay cut to become a university professor. And we started the world's first undergraduate data science degree program at George Mason University, which we started 10 years ago. Because it was important that we get this message out to the young generation, the next generation workforce, that every single one of you will touch digital information somewhere in your job, if not every day, every minute of every day. In fact, if you're holding one of these, not while I'm talking, but it's all about data and information, and someone's making money and dollars off of your digital information. Why not you too? So for me, the story has to do with the transformative power of data to improve our world, to change your life, to change our lives, to change business, to really improve everything about us. And so we're talking about taking all this data to better action, better decisions. The first part of the title here, data to action. Changing the way we use data as something to inform us, but also to direct our decision making. So the Internet of Things, I'll tell you a little bit about that. is basically with everything sort of being connected. So you may have a wearable device, you may have a Fitbit, your refrigerator might be communicating with Walmart, telling Walmart when you're out of milk. Your washing machine may be communicating with Amazon, telling you, the Amazon, that you're out of dishwashing powder, and the drone will deliver the dishwashing powder or the clothes washing powder to the front step of your door without your intervention. So sensors are going to be everywhere. So the data we've talked about 20 years ago is nothing compared to what's coming. So how did we get to this place? So I'm going to talk about first came data, then big data, then our smart data, and then I'm going to put it in the context of this Internet of Things and this what we call this self-driving enterprise, a few examples of how data science enables all that to happen, and then I'll do a case study, a very short case study near the end, and then just sort of the wrap-up of sort of like where does this all go from here. So ever since we explored our world, and when I say we, I mean every human alive, ever since we first explored our world, we ask questions about everything around us. This is the nature of being human. What is it? Why is it? How did that happen? What's going on? We always ask questions. And so as scientists, we collect data, that is evidence, to answer our questions. And as we collect data, the scientific method informs us that we usually generate new questions and run a new experiment to collect new data to answer those new questions. So as we answer those questions with new data, those new data pose new questions. Okay, so we're always asking more questions, collecting more data, asking more questions, and this sort of grows on itself. And next thing you know, you got this exponential growth of data. So how do we get to the world of what we call big data, and it's sort of this natural and human inquisitiveness and curiosity where we're measuring and tracking all kinds of stuff, which not only doesn't lead just to answers, but it leads to more questions, therefore more and more data. So people like to say that data grows exponentially, and I say that's just child's play. Okay, the world of data, people say, grows exponentially, and that's supposed to be like impressive. I'm not impressed. Data grows combinatorially. So what do I mean by that? Okay, so I'm going to use a simple example, and then I'm going to tie it back to data. Okay, so my simple example is not about data, but it's to illustrate this type of growth curve. There's 3 growth curves there. Hopefully you see. A little purple one on the bottom is a linear growth, basically a straight line. The blue one is exponential, and then the one that's really taking off is labeled holy shoot, I mean combinatorial explosion. Okay, so yes, this is a real plot. Okay, so the example I'm going to use has nothing to do with data, but it'll illustrate the point of the growth, linear versus exponential versus combinatorial. So how many of you ever seen the movie Jumper with Hayden Christensen? Anyone ever seen this movie? Okay, kind of a strange movie. The guy just basically can jump anywhere in the world at any point, at any time, right? So he can take a step and end up in the Sahara Desert, or take a step and end up in Tokyo. Okay, so it's a really interesting sort of storyline. And so I'm going to create myself an exponential, or let me just call it not exponential. I'm going to build myself a jump function, sort of like in that movie. And it's going to have 3 knobs. One's going to be linear jump, one's going to be exponential jump, and one's going to be combinatorial jump. Okay, so with this machine, if I take 13 steps with my linear jump, I can take 13 steps and be roughly 26 feet away from where I started. 2 times 13 is 26. All right? So with 13 steps of my jump function, now I don't mean necessarily steps with my feet, even though as humans we walk linearly, unless you are an amazing human being, or in a movie, you can't normally do anything but the same number of feet each step. So after 13 steps, I'm 26 feet away, which is sort of I can walk to that wall and come back to the podium. We can manage that. We can visualize that. What if I have an exponential growth function? So every step this function takes, I'm 2 to that power away. So 2 to the 13th power. Okay, so after 13 steps, I'm 2 to the 13th feet away. What's 2 to the 13th? Well, it's actually 8,000 times 2 feet. So it's basically about 5 miles away. Okay, so I could basically do 2 trips around the campus in 13 steps of this jump function. All right, that's pretty amazing, right? So when it's just me walking along, and I can go there and back in 13 steps, but with this cool jump function, I can now go around the whole campus 2 times with the same 13 steps of that function. But what about the combinatorial thing? Okay, which is basically, let's say 13 factorial means 13 times 12 times 11 times 10 times 9, 8, 7, 6. So it's a number times every number smaller than itself. which has to do with, for example, how many ways can you organize your guests at a party. All right, so if you want to how do you organize your guests sitting next to each other at a party? Let's say you're having a wedding party or a graduation party or something. There's n factorial ways of seating your guests. So this is actually a useful function in life, but it grows kind of big. So my 13 factorial jump function, okay, we can sort of visualize walking here and there. I can sort of visualize walking around campus a couple times. My 13 factorial jump function, if I had that function on my jump machine and turned to the combinatorial mode and took 13 steps, it would be 155 trips around the world. That's a little bit bigger than 2 trips around campus. All right, that is what we're dealing with. When we collect data, it's not just that we have growth in data, which is the volume is exponential. It's all the different ways we can combine the data to do new discoveries. We can combine your data and your data and your data. Or I can combine, your purchase histories on Amazon, your purchase histories on iTunes, the sporting events you go to, the concerts you go to, the music you download. All these different data points, I can look at them in all kinds of different combinations, and that's a combinatorial growth function. So even if I only have 13 pieces of information about you, there's 13 factorial ways I can combine that to analyze that data to find out about you. Okay, so if I had a really super fast computer that could do one of those calculations every billionth of a second, every nanosecond, I can look at some combination of information about you to see if there's a pattern. Like every time you download this music, you're at that concert. Or every time you're with this person, you're at a sporting event. Or every time you buy from this Starbucks, you're on your way to class. Okay, so there's some kind of combination, but it's not just that. You're on your way to class, but if it's a rainy day, you stop somewhere else. So if it's rainy and you're going to class, you stop at a different place. So now I can start looking at all these combinations to find out things about you, and that's what businesses are doing. But if I have just 13 pieces of information about you, I can write those down on a piece of paper in a matter of seconds. All right? But if I look at all 13 factorial combinations, calculating one of them every billionth of a second, which is the fastest computer around, it'll take me about 200 seconds to evaluate all 13 factorial combinations. That's doing one of them every billionth of a second. We're talking about 6 billion, if I remember my answer correctly, it's actually 6 billion calculations, 13 factorial, 6 billion. I can do that in 6 seconds if I had a nanosecond computer. Now let's just say I expand that a little bit, 26. All right? So again, with linear growth, 26 is no big deal. I can walk there and back and there and back. That's 26 steps. I can do that in a couple seconds. All right, so linear growth is small. Exponential, it's big, but again, it's not quite as big as the next one I'm going to tell you about. So if I just have 26 pieces of information by you, and if I'm a business trying to understand how do these different pieces of information about you inform me about what you like, when you like it, who you're with, when you're liking it, where are you going, where did you come from, and use this information to sell products to you, to recommend products to you, to improve your life. These 26 bits of information, if I took at all possible combinations, is 26 factorial on this world's fastest supercomputer with one calculation every billionth of a second. All right? One calculation every billionth of a second. When I had 13 of those bits of information about you, I could do it in 6 seconds. With 26 pieces of information, I'd just double the number of pieces of information. Again, I could write it down in a minute or two. It would take me 10 to the 9, 1 billion lifetimes of the universe on that super fast computer to do that calculation. It would take me 1 billion lifetimes of the universe to look at all possible combinations of just 26 bits of information about you. But I bet you between now and dinner time today, if you own one of these, you will leave a digital trail with way more than 26 bits of information. Okay? So every single day, we're generating a combinatorial explosion that businesses are trying to crack to understand how to sell to customers, how to invent new products, improve lives for everyone. And this is the world we live in. And so the only way we can manage this is if we have smart data. And by smart data, I mean we build some kind of smarts on it to say, these are the most interesting patterns we should be looking at. Out of those billions, if not trillions, if not tens of trillions of combinations that are possible, let's look at the ones that make the most sense. So what things are connected? We call this linked data. Okay? What are the things that are connected to each other that make more sense to us to look at? Those are the things that make our data smart. We're not just collecting points of data, we're connecting connections. And guess what? That's how humans learn, right? The way we learn is we see connections between things. Our eyes and ears, our senses are constantly streaming in tons of information every minute of every day. But what sticks is the stuff that's connected. Oh yeah, I saw you at this thing. Oh yeah, when I ate that particular thing, I got sick. Oh, I really love that flavor I got at Starbucks. So we're starting to make, it's the connections that matter, not all the infinite combinations of those bits of information. So we make our data smart by learning what those connections are, and we build what we call linked databases, which allow us to find those connections. So there's lots of algorithms and techniques mentioned here. I'm not here to describe all of these in detail, but there's lots of ways we can understand what it is that's important in our data and make those connections. And that's called pattern recognition. And so a very smart person once said that the essence of human intelligence is pattern recognition. That is, you know when that lion is coming to turn around and run. You know something is edible or not edible, okay? So you recognize a pattern. You recognize your loved one. You recognize your friend in class. You recognize that question on the exam. Oh, yeah, I actually know the answer. Okay. So it's about pattern recognition. That's what humans are really good at. And so our algorithms are good at finding the patterns, emulating what we already do naturally. All right, but the information flood is so huge now, we need the computers, we need the machines, we need the algorithms to help us get there. And businesses are working towards that. So basically emulating the human brain, understanding all the connectivity that makes something smart, that makes information flood meaningful. The connections. Knowledge is about synthesis of facts. It's not the facts itself, it's the synthesis, putting it together, seeing what's connected to what. Okay, so in I would say pre-college, you all were somewhere else before college, right? Not too many people went straight from the womb to college, right? All right, so pre-college, most of education is learning facts. Hopefully what college is synthesis of facts. It's synthesizing knowledge out of all these things you've learned. And that knowledge helps you to make better decisions, be a better citizen of the world, be a better business person, be a better scientist, be a better whatever you choose to do in your life. Because you're now seeing the connection, understanding, seeing the patterns, recognizing patterns, and knowing how to react. So that's what we're trying to do here. So this famous writer, William Shakespeare, said, all the world is a graph. Well, actually, he said something else. He said, all the world is a stage, but this is my paraphrase of William Shakespeare. Okay, what do I mean by that? So how many of you ever worked with an Excel spreadsheet? Most of you have seen it, if not worked with it, right? So what's an Excel spreadsheet? It's rows and columns, right? What I tell people is the natural data structure of our world, the natural thing as humans, is not rows and columns. We have yet to uncover some ancient burial site of Neanderthals or even Stonehenge where people had spreadsheets. The natural data structure of our world is a graph. That is entities that are connected to other things. It's the relationships, it's the things and the relationships between them that are most important. Now, we already know this from social networks. But businesses are learning the same thing applies to a business network, a product network, an employee network, a client network. All right, even so far as understanding how to predict cyber terrorists based upon who are they connected to, who do they talk to, who are they related to, where do they go, where do they travel. The connectiveness between the things is more important than just having rows and rows and rows and rows and rows of numbers, okay? So you can do much faster discovery. Again, taking that combinatorial explosion of knowledge, if you just store it in rows and columns, no one's ever going to make sense of it. But looking at what's connected to what, and then all of a sudden we can make sense, find the patterns, find the connectedness, and do the discovery. And so there's some examples on the slide. You can read the fine print if you can. You know, in medicine, and telecommunications, and government, and cybersecurity, life sciences, energy resources, all kinds of places this is being applied. So in business, we do this all the time. Maybe we don't call it the customer graph, but this is what it is. Facebook is famous for what they call the Open Graph Protocol, where they actually publish their graph. Okay, so they don't publish your personal information, but they say people who like this product also like that product. People who viewed this video and like this video also like this thing. And so this knowledge graph is open to the world, so people can see what people like, what people view, how they like it, when they like it, where are they when they like it, who else with them like it, all this information. So looking at customers, where they are, when they buy things, what time of day, location, context, you name it, that graph, it gives us inspiration as to how best to work with our customers. So I want to give you another example of this, which I call my breaking my lessons learned from my trigonometry class. Anyone here have had trigonometry? Probably, to graduate high school, you probably needed trigonometry, right? So in trigonometry, you learn this thing called the triangle inequality. So what's the triangle inequality? So if you have a triangle, the length of one side plus the other side is always at least as large, the sum of those, larger than the hypotenuse, right? You can't have a triangle where the third side is larger than the sum of those two. The most extreme example is if the triangle looks like that, right? Then it's the same length. But any regular triangle, that side gets shorter and shorter and shorter. So that's the triangle inequality. So if you're saying, I'm close to you, and you're close to her, all right, but my closeness to her is at least no greater than the sum of the two, all right? But what if I said to you, I could walk up to someone and say, all right, I'm really close to you, and you're really close to her, but the distance between me and her is infinite. How is that possible? That completely violates the triangle inequality. I'm close to you, you're close to her, but our distance is infinite. How can you have an infinite distance between two things who are the intermediary, the point between them is very close to both of them? Well, this happens all the time in life because the world is not about rows and columns, it's about the graph. So I want to show you a graph here where this actually could be happening. So I have some white hats here and some black hats here. Now that's intentional because the black hats might be human traffickers or drug traffickers or money launderers. All right, traffickers in illegal goods. All right. So a business that analyzes their rows and columns, their Excel spreadsheets or their databases to say, have we ever seen Black Hat 1 transfer money to Black Hat 3? Because that would be really bad, because that's a bad organization, and they should never be exchanging goods or money. But nowhere in the transaction database do you ever see a connection between 1 and 3. 1 never transfers anything to 3 or vice versa. So in terms of similarity, our triangle inequality, they're infinitely far apart. They never have any interaction with each other, ever. And yet, number 1 gleefully transfers all kinds of money to all these white hats over here. And Black Hat 3 gleefully transfers money between all those white hats over there. And there happens to be one that's in common between them. That's called the money launderer. So transferring money from 1 to 2 is legal. Transferring money from 2 to 3 is legal. So someone who's just searching through databases of hundreds of billions of financial transactions, well, I love to say that because Carl Sagan, famous astronomer, billions and billions of, you know the guy, right? So billions and billions of transactions every day, you'll never find a transaction from 1 to 3. So you can search till you die, you'll never find it. But look what happens when you look at it from the graph. You see there's one short hop between those two. So what looks like an infinite distance between 1 and 3 is made much shorter by their connection to that intermediary. So not to put just a negative spin on this, not only does this apply to money laundering and drug trafficking and human trafficking, but there's also positive benefits of this as well as, well, that's a positive benefit to detect those bad things, but there's also good things you can detect with this. For example, medical research discoveries. I actually had a PhD student who actually was analyzing 23 million articles in the medical journals to see articles that talked about different medical concepts. What do they overlap with in these articles and these articles and these articles? Drugs, treatments, diseases, symptoms, outcomes, DNA sequences that express themselves in certain ways, DNA sequences that are impacted by certain treatments. They're actually using this. He actually did this to study what we call a semi-metric space. That's the technical word at the top here. So the semi-metric space is a space that violates the triangle inequality. Can you find cases where articles like A to Z, there's no connection between them whatsoever, but there's all these intermediary journals that connect them? And maybe A to C. So there's some article that's very common. A and B are very similar. B and C are very similar. A and C, no overlap at all. So once he did this dissertation on this very theoretical topic, the Advanced Research Projects Agency, one of our major research agencies in the US, created a $39 million research program. People write grants, faculty here? You ever write grant proposals? Have you ever won a $39 million grant proposal? I have never. Okay. This was a big deal. Why did they do that? Because they believed that there might actually exist a cure for cancer already published that we don't know about because we're missing the connections. This drug, A, treats patients with disease B who have symptoms C, which appear in patients that have disease C, which are affected by this cancer E. Maybe this treatment can help these people. And no one would ever know because there's 23 million journal articles in 20,000 independent journals, medical research journals. No one could ever possibly know the knowledge across those journals. So knowledge is about synthesizing all the information, and this helps us to do that. So we may actually have in the existence of our research publications in the world already a cure for cancer waiting. And so someone did a minor version of this. Cancer is a pretty big deal. So they looked at some other kind of more simpler diseases to crack. And they actually discovered a new treatment for a disease just by doing this data mining research. It was all done just by data mining. No clinical trial. Well, they had to do the clinical trial before they could start prescribing it. But they discovered the cure or the treatment just from data mining journals. Again, finding the connections across hops where the two things were not connected. Nowhere in the literature did it say this drug could treat that disease, but there were steps in between that led to that conclusion. So that's one example. Another example, great for business school, is marketing attribution analysis. Okay, so if you walk out of here and you go to Starbucks and buy something, why did you buy that? Because you go there every day? Because your friend told you? Or because I mentioned it in my talk and now you're hungry for Starbucks? Okay, they have this new unicorn frappuccino I just saw yesterday. Okay, I got to get that. It's pink and blue, and we were just comparing ties here. I think we should go get some frappuccino. Okay, so marketing attribution analysis is why did the customer buy that? Did they hear an ad on the radio? Did they see an ad on Facebook? Did they see it on TV? Was it on the Super Bowl ad? Businesses care about this. If they're spending $4 million for a 1-minute segment on a Super Bowl ad, they want to know whether or not they actually had some impact. Okay, so marketing attribution analysis basically is tracing back what was the ultimate reason that this customer bought this product or came to our store or did this thing. Okay, again, it might be the same sort of analysis. There's no direct link. Person doesn't walk in to Starbucks this afternoon. You're probably not going to go in there and say, hey, Dr. Bourne talked about Starbucks. That's why I'm here today. You're probably not going to do that. Okay. I'd be flattered if you did. If you do, make sure you post it on Twitter. Okay? But if you don't do that, I mean, how could they trace this? Okay, so there's all kind of digital signals about what you like on Facebook and web pages you visit and your digital exhaust, as they call it, your digital trail as you leave the room. They can trace this back. And again, it's an application of this to that problem. So there's all kinds of places in our world where a non-traditional way of thinking about your data can solve this combinatorial explosion problem that's going to drive us crazy if we try to analyze it in traditional ways. Right? So as Shakespeare said, all the world is a graph. So what is this IoT? So the IoT, in principle, you could imagine a sensor or a device on everything. Your refrigerator, your wrist, all right, your washing machine, your car, but it's everything. Okay, so jet engines, like one Boeing airliner jet engine, one jet engine on one plane, of which there are thousands, tens of thousands of Boeing jets flying every day. One engine produces like 30 terabytes of data per hour. One engine. Any people heard of the Higgs boson discovery a few years ago? Okay, this physics experiment called the Large Hadron Collider, they basically analyzed 2 petabytes of data per second. All right, that's a lot of data. Okay. All right, so now imagine that you have a sensor on everything on the world. Now and then you want to look at all possible combinations. Hey, when this happens, this also happens. So, when it rains, I get more lawsuits on my law firm. Oh, maybe I should check the front steps of my law office. Maybe they get slippery when it rains. Okay, so you start piecing together the stories, finding the connections between those dots. Okay, connecting the dots, the graph, understanding where the knowledge is. Okay, so we're going to have the problem I just described. Maybe the medical case sounded extreme, but imagine this with not just 26 or 13 things we're connecting, but trillions of things. Someone estimates there's going to be like 50 billion sensors in the Internet of Things by the year 2020. Within 3 years, there's going to be 50 billion things that we can do, 50 billion factorial. I don't know what that number is, but it's probably going to take an infinite number of lifetimes in the universe to analyze if we take it the old traditional way. But we can't do that. So we're going to have to figure out how to make best use of this. And the goal is we're going to make decisions off of all this information. So it's a dynamic, data-driven application system. There's a buzzword for you. Dynamic, that is, it's changing. It's data-driven, that is, we use the information to make a decision. And it's an application of something, whether it's improving traffic flow. So smart cars will be an example of that. Connected cars is another example. Your car is already a connected car. Okay, you see the ads on TV. The car is going down the highway. All of a sudden, the brakes are applied automatically because 4 cars ahead, someone is braking. The driver of this car can't even see that. But your car knows because the cars are talking to each other. Already happening. Okay, it's not a smart car. That is, it's not a self-driving car. But we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, but that connectivity, the connections, again, like I said, it's about the connections. That information is now connecting across all devices. How can we make our world smarter and better? So people talk about this in many contexts. You know, smart cities, smart retail, predictive traffic, precision farming, smart grid, predictive maintenance. That is, you can predict when that engine's going to fail. Prescriptive maintenance, that is, knowing it's going to fail, you do something about it instead of just waiting for it to fail. So we're going to get into that in a few minutes, the difference between predictive and prescriptive. Okay, so if I predict you're going to die of cancer, thank you, have a nice day, see you later. Or am I going to prescribe something to help make that not happen? So a lot of predictive analytics in business, I hate to say this, I've been to a lot of conferences, and business will stand up, especially software vendors will stand up at these conferences, hey, we do advanced analytics, buy our product. And when you talk to them, what they call advanced analytics is predictive modeling. Here's what's happening, and I predict this outcome. All right? So I'll give you an example from astronomy. So we study everything in the sky that's tracking and moving, so we have our own Internet of Things problem. And so we're tracking not just stars and galaxies, but they don't move, but we watch them and observe them and collect data. But also there are things moving, like asteroids. So sometimes we see these asteroids moving across the solar system. We get enough data points, we can predict an orbit where it's going to be at any given time. So imagine sometime, one in the not too distant future, because this telescope project that was mentioned in my introduction will come online in a few years, and we're going to do a nighttime movie of the sky for 10 years, way more data than anyone's ever seen in astronomy. And we're going to be able to track, find orbits of all these asteroids. So what if one day we find an asteroid whose orbit predicts that it's going to hit Earth and wipe out civilization? Right? That's called killer asteroid. It's happened before. It wiped out the dinosaurs. It's likely to happen again. It might wipe out human civilization. So what if I stand up to you today and say, okay, we got this orbit, and doing our predictive analytics, we predict the world will end next Tuesday. Thank you. Have a good day. Wait, come back. Can't you do something about it? That's prescriptive analytics, doing something about it. So people whose backgrounds is OR, operations research, you know all about this, right? Is finding the optimal solution, not just the one that's going to happen by itself if you don't do anything about it. So the way you can prescribe a better outcome is you have more insight from more sensors and more data. The more we understand the context of when do you go to Starbucks, why do you go to Starbucks, who do you go with, what time of day, what day of week, what class. I could probably figure out your class schedule just by when you stop by Starbucks. Okay, and some people actually could do something. They could probably even figure out not only what time you go to class, but what classes you're taking by just the time between stops at different places, right? So, never mind. Okay, so there's all kinds of interesting use cases here, but collecting data from sensors allows us to do precision things, smart things, precise, predictive, prescriptive, and even, yes, personalized. That is, it's personalized to you, your context, your interests, your preferences, your intents, things you like to do. All right, all that stuff is about smart data. So all of this leads to this little model here. So I have this model of the self-driving enterprise. Okay, so the self-driving enterprise is modeled off the self-driving car. So businesses, the more automation businesses have, the better, right? Because it enables them to get down to the business of business, all right? Like, for example, how many people ever get products recommended to you, like on Amazon or Netflix or any web, or even iTunes, anything you go to, it recommends some movie or some music or something. So recommender engines, those things are called, they're using this data mining and machine learning algorithm. There's not a person sitting there for you saying, oh yeah, they're logged on now. Let me see what they like. Wait a minute, I got it here. We recommend this for you. No, that would be stupid, right? Because there's millions, if not hundreds of millions of customers every day, especially in something like Netflix. There's an algorithm automatically doing that. So there are things in your business you can automate. And the more they can automate, the more they can get down to the business of innovating and making better business, better products for better customer interaction. Okay, so how can you imagine this, what I would call the self-driving organization, the one that it automates as much as possible the things that you can automate? So the self-driving car may not be there yet because there's been some failure cases of accidents and horrible things happening, but someday we'll probably have self-driving cars on the road for everyone. In fact, someone once said I think they said, for the young people in the room, your children's generation will be the last generation to actually need a driver's license. Think about that. And maybe even you might be that last generation if the technology advances fast enough. That we'll get to the point where we're just not going to allow humans to get behind the wheel of a car anymore because the algorithm can drive the car much more safely, much more efficiently. I saw a demonstration once where it showed the traffic in a major city, Athens, Greece. Crazy traffic there. It's so crazy that only odd number license plate cars can drive in the city on odd number days and even number license plate cars can drive on even numbers days. That's pretty bad, right? And they showed what if there was an algorithm? People were, all these cars were turning left and crossing in front of each other and all this kind of stuff, and it's like there was no accident. There was just like an amazingly fast lane changing and people turning left in front of people, right in front of people, all kinds of stuff. Well, if there's an algorithm driving your car and not a person hesitating, distracted, not accelerating fast or too fast or whatever, it could actually be more efficient like that. Okay, again, we're not going to turn this loose today or tomorrow on our cities, but someday. Okay, so imagine you take that kind of an analogy of a self-driving car, extrapolate it to whatever you're doing. A self-driving city, which might be improved transportation, improved use of power, improved distribution of food, clean water, you name it. Maybe self-driving drones, okay? Obviously we have that already, but imagine, again, Amazon knowing that you're out of dish powder or knowing that you're out of a certain thing and it automatically delivers to your front doorstep with the drone. Okay, automatic supply chains and so on. So what are these things doing? So I thought about the defining characteristics which apply to the self-driving car. If this is a little too abstract, just think about the self-driving car, but then it applies to an enterprise, a business, an organization, even deep space probes, okay, which are traveling in space. There's not a whole lot of human intervention because they're pretty far out there. They have to make decisions based upon the data they're collecting. So the defining characteristics, first of all, it's sensing. It's sensing its environment. It's collecting information. Because how many of you get behind the wheel of a car, close your eyes, and then just turn on the engine and drive to where you want to go without looking? I hope you don't do that. Okay. You're sensing your environment. You're making decisions based upon not just instantaneous data. You look once, close your eye. It's streaming information. So it's sensing and streaming. All right. It's responsive. Okay. See something, move out of the way, turn. Okay. So even a business that sees some change in the market or some new trend or something's not selling or selling better, you're responsive, and you don't want to respond over a year or 2 year or multi-year time scale. You want to be agile. You want to be learning about this. All right, so you say, oh, every January during Super Bowl season, this thing really sells a lot. Okay, or during March Madness, this college gear sells really well in March Madness season. Maybe not so much other times. Okay, so you're learning and you're ready to respond because you know what's coming. But also you're contextual and optimizing. That is, you don't just drive with blinders on. You see what's around you. You see what else is coming at you. You see what's happening in the environment. So it's all this. That's where the Internet of Things is really helpful. There's these other sensors giving you other information about what's going on that maybe you're not looking directly at. So you can optimize that decision. So the killer asteroid is the example of that. I don't really predict the asteroid is going to wipe out civilization, but I'm going to do something about it. I'm not going to predict you're going to get cancer, but I'm going to do something about it. Okay? I'm not going to predict that my customers are going to take their business to another client. I'm going to do something about it. Okay? So you contextual optimizing. Contextual means other information about the thing, and then optimizing your outcome. And then the highest level of maturity in all this is that when you actually know the right decision at the right time and take the right action in that right context. All right, that's where we want to be. So in the data analytics world, we have words for these things. And this is truly the data analytics maturity life cycle, going from descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, prescriptive, cognitive. So not only describe what's going on, but you can do it in real time. That's diagnostic. You can be predictive, say what's coming, but also you say, no, I may not like what's coming, I want to change it and get a better outcome. That's prescriptive. And then when you take in all that information, so you take the best action at the right time, in the right place, in the right context, that's being cognitive. All right? And so the organizational posture is this. Okay? So you can be passive and just let the world happen to you, or you can react to things, so you don't really do anything except in a reactive mode. That in itself is not necessarily really the best way to operate. So you can be proactive, which is you can see what's coming, predict, and be more proactive. But this prescriptive I was trying to say to you is even better, where you take that, you can predict a better outcome if I did something different. Okay, that's predictive reactive. Okay, so I say if I did something different, I could have some better outcome. Okay, so it's not the one that I predict, it's a different one. And then at the end of the day, you're hopefully being a smart, sense-making organization. So again, when I say self-driving enterprise, it could be cars, cities, drones, deep space probes. It could be the supply chain. It could be an app. Okay, many apps are designed to be like this. Understand what your user experience is, and then try to improve the user experience as you go. So we have people who are in app design know all about these things. Okay, they do eye tracking. What are you looking at on the page? What are you looking at when you look at my app? Understanding what is drawing someone's attention and try to improve the user experience by having them look at the thing you want them to look at, have the experience you want them to have. All right, so part of this whole story, it sounds very technical, but let me give you one of my less technical descriptions. Okay, so there's this story of this guy, an old guy. He sits on his front porch on a farm in the Midwest, and he's famous because he can actually tell the weather from a piece of string. Right? You can tell the weather from a piece of string. So someone heard this story once and said, "This is crazy. How can he do this?" So they went to visit this guy and they said, "Is it really true you can tell the weather from a piece of string?" And he says, "Yeah, well, I don't have any string up here." But anyway, so he said, "Yeah, I take this piece of string and I hold it out here. If it's hanging straight down, that means the weather is calm. If it's horizontal, it means we're having a tornado. And if it's wet, it means it's raining outside." Okay, so what's happening there is he's being descriptive, not predictive. Okay, so clearly there's a different level of this. And you might laugh at this, and I hope you did. But there's a lot of businesses who are in the world of analytics, and all they're doing is level one here. All they're doing is business reporting. They're describing what happened last business quarter. They're telling you what they sold last quarter, last year, last month, last week. They're not looking forward. They're not predicting. They're not being proactive. They're not even being prescriptive, understanding what they could do to get a better sales figure than the one they're predicting. And taking in contextual information, like what are our competitors selling? Is there a Super Bowl going on? Is there a game this weekend? All right. So there's lots of examples of how this has failed in practice. And one really famous example of how this failed in practice was the case. I don't want to pick on Uber. I use Uber to get here, and I'm going to use Uber to get back to the hotel this evening. Okay, but there's a famous fail example from Uber, where they use just very traditional economics, supply and demand. All right, so the higher the demand and the less the supply, you can raise the price of a product. Right? You learned this early on, right? Didn't most of you learn this in school? Right? And so in their app, there's sort of this built-in pricing model that as the demand increases and the supply of Uber drivers decreases, then they can increase the price of a ride. That was fine until there was that terrorist attack in Melbourne when everyone was trying to escape from the city, all calling Ubers, and the price of an Uber ride went through the roof. Talk about bad customer experience. All right. That was really the wrong thing to do when people were desperately trying to evacuate a danger zone, a terrorist attack zone. All right, so supply and demand, the traditional rules of economics do not apply. So that might be something that you might call sort of a responsive mode, not understanding the context in which all this was happening. So understanding the context in which something is happening is way more important, which is why it's at the highest level of cognitive ability or analytics capability. Is as what else is going on that I need to know before I take an action. That's important. That's really important, okay? And so there's been lots of failures in the news of late. I won't name any, okay, where businesses have done some really, think about the United Airlines case. Okay, enough said. There's cases where things have happened that have been really bad for the branding of the business, and if they just thought ahead about the context of what was going on, they could have made a better decision. All right, so I'm going to move a little bit more rapidly here because I know timing is fast here, and I have cool stuff that will wait. So if anyone have a pen and paper at the end of this, I'm going to tell you a link on how you can get all of these slides if I don't spend the time on all of them I'd like to. So what we're moving through in our world here is a lot of use of this terminology in business and everywhere. And not too many people understand it. Now, this isn't meant to be a vocabulary lesson, but it's meant to understand people are using an awful lot of terminology like machine learning, data mining, artificial intelligence, robotics, even cognitive computing, data science, analytics. So for me, the fundamental thing here is the fundamental basis set are these algorithms from mathematics called machine learning algorithms. So these are algorithms that learn from experience. All right, so as I said, humans, we see things and we learn. We make the connection. Child learns very early on. Don't touch the hot stove because it burns and it hurts. All right? You learn from experience. As someone said once, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. Hope none of you have lived through that. But algorithms learn from experience, and that teaches us how to find patterns in data. It also teaches robots how to find the door to leave the room or any other kind of self-driving car or bot to behave in the real world. It learns from experience. Okay, so there's algorithms that encode the knowledge that's being acquired from the data, and those algorithms are applied to data. It's called data mining applied to application systems. We call it robotics or artificial intelligence. So one of the reasons I say this is we hear all these sort of scary world views of artificial intelligence and how AI is going to wipe us out. And we have tons of movies which are very entertaining. Very few are realistic, but they're entertaining movies. And people say, oh, you should stop doing this machine learning stuff because you're wiping out civilization with it. And I say, it's fundamental math. Math is agnostic to how you apply it. All right, it's like saying arithmetic is evil. Okay, no, it's fundamental. Okay, so you have to think as you're applying it, but it doesn't mean that the foundational truths of it are bad. All right, so we apply these techniques to data, and when we apply it to business, we learn about business decisions, how to do things more optimally. Again, the best decisions, the best actions at the right time. That's our data science, and the actual application, decision, doing it, that's the analytics. So health analytics or cybersecurity analytics. I always tell people if you're thinking about doing something in analytics, the two biggest demand areas for applications are both cybersecurity and health analytics. Cyber, because we are in World War III, whether you believe it or not. It's a cyber war. It's happening all the time. And health analytics, because of the aging population, the demand for health data and health information to improve health outcomes for a growing aging population is enormous right now, which is absolutely enormous demand here. So moving on from these sort of levels of discovery, which I can tell you a lot about, which I won't, but finding patterns in the data. There's all these different techniques of finding patterns, classes, segments, correlations, and surprises in your data. I want to tell you a simpler example, which is this chatbot example, okay? So you've probably seen chatbots if you ever use Siri or something similar to Siri on your smartphone. This is a true story. The first time Siri was released, someone said, Siri said, call me an ambulance, and Siri said, okay, from now on I'll call you an ambulance, okay? All right, well that was sort of a failure mode. The one on the right is more interesting. All right, so the guy is saying, hey, what's the weather like in France? I'd like to book a flight. And the bot says, oh, where do you want to go? What? I just said I would like, I just mentioned France. Okay, so what's happening here, which was actually at the bottom of my self-driving organization, I didn't highlight, but if anyone was paying attention, there was a word at the bottom of the page that kept changing color every time I changed slide. And that word is stateful. Anyone see that? A stateful algorithm is one that remembers a sequence of things. It remembers where it's been. So it's like driving down the road and you relearn the rules of the road and how to drive every second. Every second I remember, oh yeah, stop at a stop sign, let pedestrian cross, drive in the right lane, not the left lane. I mean, it's like, no, you remember things, and that memory is you have the state of a competent driver in you. But most algorithms aren't built that way. They take in a piece of data, say, what can I learn from this data? Oh, there's a pattern here, there's this. Here's some data. Oh, and it's like it just forgets what you just learned. Like the app here forgot that the conversation was about France. And you might think this is sort of a silly cartoon, but many more businesses are creating chatbots. So when you call up, press 1 for this, press 2. They're actually having a real conversation, but it's a bot. It's not just press 1 for this and press 2 for that. It's a conversational AI that you're talking to. And it's really annoying if the conversational AI forgets the context of the conversation. Okay? So as soon as you get to the next question, it answers that question, but forgets it was about some topic. Okay? So I'm calling about my broken car. Okay, what can I help you with? I think it's the brakes. Okay, so you want some brakes. Are you interested in breakdancing? No, wait a minute. I was just talking about my car. Okay, so it's called catastrophic forgetfulness. Okay, so this is a fundamental problem, and there's some new algorithms that have just been published in the last month that solve the catastrophic forgetfulness problem. But it's a hard problem. But how does an algorithm remember sort of a sequence that it's already in, as opposed to just I take the data. So anyone who's ever done a data mining competition, I know there are people that talked about that at our lunch today. All right. So normally, so once you build your algorithm to classify something like a customer, and in your case, I guess you're classifying, homeowners, right? you get a new homeowner, you stick that data in, and you classify that one. But it's just like that's all you know about. You forgot the fact that you learned about all these other customers who were in the same neighborhood. So maybe there's a neighborhood you want to do your target marketing on, not just an individual. Okay, so it's not just you learn that one bit of information, you learn the whole contextual thing. So it's all about user experience. And this is my favorite, there's lots of words on this slide, but this is my favorite graphic. A lot of times we design things and build them without the customer in mind. So take a look at that graph and think about it for a second. Okay, someone designed sidewalks on that campus and people found the shorter way, the better way to get to where they want to go, which was not using the sidewalk, but cutting the corner. So there's this famous story about Walt Disney when they built Disneyland, the first, before Disney World even, that he told the engineers, do not put down sidewalks. Watch where people walk and then lay the concrete. Okay, so watch where people go first. And this is the lessons that businesses are learning from data analytics. Look at what our users are doing. Look how they're using our product or using our website or using our apps or visiting online stores or whatever. Look at that path they're walking and make that enriched. Don't force them to go the hard way to something. Okay, so user experience is gold right now for businesses. All right, and you don't think it's gold. Let me tell you one fact that just blew my socks away. In the past year, statistic was amazing. In the past year, globally, in banking, worldwide banking, more than 50% of bank transactions in the world by customers like you and me are performed on a mobile device. Now, maybe you already do that and you think, what's so big about that? I'm talking about the entire world. More than 50% of all bank transactions in the world are done here, not walking to the bank or even on a PC, right there. And if they don't have a good app, a good user experience, they're going to lose customers. Believe me, they're spending big bucks to understand from the data, where are our users walking? What are they doing? What are they looking at? Where are they trying to go? How hard do we make it for them to do a transfer? Banks are doing this new thing. And I'm actually staying at a hotel down the street, and right across the street from the hotel is a bank with a big sign on the front. They said, we allow you to see your balances without logging in. And that's the new thing. I was in Europe a couple weeks ago, and there's this big data innovation summit, and they were talking about these banks in Europe. You can now see your balance without logging in. Okay, we're 2 weeks behind in, here, but that's okay. But the idea is that the users don't want to go through all that process just to see a balance. I mean, what can you possibly really know about me if you just see a few numbers on a screen? You're not getting my personal identifying information. I mean, if I have some kind of bank balance that I don't want you to know about, then maybe I wouldn't be using that app in front of you. But I mean, it's not like really secret information. Anyway, so that's an example of understanding how to help users. And it's all traced upon data, understanding where they've been. That's the stateful piece. Not only did you end up here, but how did you get here? That's that overcoming the catastrophic forgetfulness problem. You came to my bank today. Thank you very much. But what's missing in that equation is all the trouble you had to do to get to that point. Okay, so you chose your own path, and can't the business find that out and improve that path for you? So we're doing this in our analytics. We're trying to move from just describing what happened to getting better at predicting it and then prescribing a better outcome, and then ultimately the cognitive piece, which is knowing the right decision at the right action at the right time. So that's where we're trying to get. Now I just want to say one little thing about predictive and prescriptive. Now those two words sound very similar, and it's okay if you're confused by it, because I've gone to many conferences of very high-level technical people who confuse these two things, all right? I mean, I'm talking about people who spent their entire lives in this space, professionals who still interchange the use of these two words. And I'm going to give you three ways, a couple of them are simple, to distinguish these two. And it's important because this is real. So as I said earlier, some businesses say they're doing advanced analytics, they're doing predictive. They're not even doing prescriptive, which is more advanced. So there's the wordy description, I'm going to give you a math description and a philosopher description, and then we'll be coming close to the wrap up here. So the wordy description is, what's predictive? Given all the data I have, I can predict an outcome. So, okay, given what I know about the behavior of this person or this system or this car or this business or this sports team or anything, I can predict an outcome. Okay, that's predictive. Given all the data, I predict an outcome. Or in simple math terms, given X, find Y. Given X, find Y. Simple math. Prescriptive is, given all this information, I now have insight. From my insight, I know that if I reset some conditions, let's take an example of a basketball team. I know if I put this player in under these conditions in the game, I'll have a better outcome than if I just leave my starters out there. Okay, so the prescriptive model says, I now have insight from all this data. Now I have all this information coming at me. From the insight I glean from this data, I can now achieve a better outcome than the one that I predicted. So mathematically, that says, given Y, find X. I bet you never had a math class that had you do that. Most math classes said, given X, find Y. Prescriptive analytics is, given Y, find X. That is, here's the outcome I want. What is the input I need to give to achieve the better outcome, the different outcome? So the different outcome might be higher sales, higher customer satisfaction, fewer complaints, faster delivery, more supply, whatever, okay? So imagine Starbucks running out of unicorn frappuccinos. That would be pretty disappointing, right? Because you saw it in the news, you want to get one, you go there and they're out. What the heck? Okay, so they better have a good supply on hand, and when they go public with this big national branding campaign on the unicorn frappuccinos, okay? If they didn't supply enough materials for their shops to make that, that would be pretty bad. Okay, so they could see it coming, and so they make sure stuff is there. Okay, so wordy definition, simple math definition. Given X, find Y. Given Y, find X. But in case that doesn't stick, I'm going to go to philosophy to help you. So I looked very hard in the past, and I found the first predictive analytics philosopher. His name was Confucius, and he said, study your past to know your future. So anyone who's ever built a machine learning algorithm, and some of you in the room have done this, a predictive algorithm, that's exactly what you do, right? You learn from the training data, and you predict a class label. You predict an outcome. So you study your past to know your future. That's predictive analytics, traditional machine learning. All right? So what about prescriptive? Well, I looked pretty far, but I finally found a famous philosopher who made a comment about prescriptive. So I think he's the world's first prescriptive analytics philosopher. Some of you may know him. His name is Yogi Berra, famous baseball philosopher, who said the future ain't what it used to be. That is to say, I'm not just going to get the outcome I predict, I want to change it. I want to do something better, something different. So the future ain't what it used to be. Okay. So Yogi Berra, famous baseball philosopher. So you probably know him from many different things. He had this other quote. He said, you can see a lot just by looking. Yeah, what did he say? Half of baseball is 90% mental or something like that? Anyway, so context is king. So context is other data about your data. Sometimes we call that metadata. All right? So it's not just driving my car with blinders on. I'm getting the whole picture, the whole context. It's not just making my business decision based upon what I see right in front of me, but the whole context. What's happening in the industry, what's happening with my competitors, what's happening in the market, what's happening outside. Okay, the case from Melbourne, Australia, the terrorist attack, what's happening in the community. You know, take the blinders off, use that context to make better decisions. Okay, so you can see a lot just by looking. Okay. So that's context is king. Some people say content is king. Well, they're both king. I don't know. One's queen, one's king. You can debate which one is which. Okay. So the Internet of Things sensor data provides you a lot of that context data. It's all this other information from these other sensors. And there's a lot more words on these slides. I'm not trying to read all this to you. I already talked about the connected smart cars. That was an example. So literally, those 5 levels of analytics maturity map right into our self-driving enterprise. Okay, so case study, and then I'll give a quick wrap up and we'll be done. So the case study are Mars rovers. Okay, space scientists, I got to talk some space science briefly, okay? But it's not about Mars rovers, it's a metaphor for a business case. All right, metaphor. Why is a metaphor good? Because no one ever made a decision because of a number. They need a story. In fact, we talked about this earlier today at the advisory board meeting, right? Data storytelling is one of the most important characteristics of a good data science. You can tell the story of your data. You can explain to people what it means. How did you get there? What's the insight? What should I do about it? Okay, it's the what, the so what, and the now what of your data. Okay, and so telling a story is giving more than just a picture. So I like to say, we all know that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but a picture plus 1,000 words is worth 10,000 words. That is, if you can tell a story about it, it's even more valuable. So this story is not about Mars rovers, even though it is. It's about any independent, intelligent data gathering agent, which might be an electronic health record, it might be your customer website, it could be anything. It could be the self-driving car, it could be the drone, it could be your supply chain, it could be your manufacturing plant. All right? It's an intelligent data gatherer. It's a mobile data mining agent. It's autonomous. Those rovers are in deep space. There's no human out there driving it. I guarantee you the light travel time is sufficient that if Houston Control said turn left, it'd be 40 minutes before the command got there, by which time the rover would probably have driven off the cliff, and 40 minutes later before we knew that we gave it the wrong command. Okay, so it's not a very agile system. Okay, so it's got to be an autonomous decision support system and self-driving. Well, characteristically of a Mars rover is that it is indeed self-driving. But imagine, so that rover drives around, it sees interesting patterns in the data, interesting rocks, interesting patterns, pattern recognition, the essence of human intelligence. It understands what's going on there. It decides, hey, this is really cool, let's stay here. Oh, here's a trend in this direction, let's move in this direction. Here's something bad in that way, let's not go that way. This is interesting, but it's not very interesting, so we can report this later. Oh, here's something that's really important. We need to wake up everybody in the business and let them know right now, like a disease outbreak or a terrorist attack. Okay, so there's a whole concept of business goal monitoring, understanding, do I stay here and do more? Do I follow a trend to some more interesting place? Do I send discoveries to human analysts immediately, or can I send results later? All right, so that's happening on a Mars rover, but it's also happening in business processes, especially automated business processes, in electronic health systems, okay, in customer interaction systems, okay, in your apps, okay, it's happening. Okay, so the Mars rover, again, is as a metaphor for this process of collecting data from many sensors, understanding the context, and making the best possible decision. So it's going from sensors, which are the data collectors, to sentinels, which sentinels are the guard posts that say, hey, here's something interesting. No, that's not interesting. Here's something interesting. That's not interesting. So the sentinel is the machine learning algorithm that figures out whether something is interesting or not. And from that, from the sensors to the sentinels, you make sense of all that in order to take action. Okay, from sensors to sentinels to sense. So what's a sentinel? You know what a sentinel is, right? It's the guard on the guard post at the castle, right? You've heard of this before? So wouldn't it be really annoying if the guard on the guard post of the castle every 5 minutes of the nighttime, it's all clear. It's all clear. It's all clear. I mean, this would be pretty damn annoying, right? So this is called alarm fatigue. So one of the biggest problems in these business analytics systems is they generate a lot of false positives. All right, it tells you something is happening when it isn't. Okay, and so a team won a data mining competition by having the most accurate predictive algorithm among a whole bunch of competitors, right? And so the better you can reduce the false positives and false negatives, that is, you get the right answer right, and when something is interesting, you call it out. When it's not interesting, you don't call it out. All right, so that's the importance of having really good algorithms that can understand what is important, what is not important to the system. And so whether it's a Mars rover or a customer or a patient in a hospital, this is all very important. So at the end of the day, our roadmap is to help us take all these data for discovery, decisions, and actions, which come from a lot of these Internet of Things sensors in the world of dynamic data-driven application systems. The goal is data to action. Take data, understand what it means from sensors through sentinels to sense making, take action. So whether it's predictive maintenance alerts on machines, prescriptive efficiencies in business, that is knowing that you deploy certain processes or products or employees in certain places at certain times in order to achieve better outcomes, supply chain monitoring, and so on and so on and so on. Cybersecurity alerts, fraud alerts, health alerts, you name it. Everyone's asking for this in the world. Okay, so if you're in an analytics profession, you're doing the right thing. If you're in an analytics degree program, you're doing the right thing. If you're not in the analytics profession, there are people at the door to sign you up before you leave. So it touches everything in the world. So I always tell people, follow your passion first. If your passion is sports, you can do sports analytics. If your passion is healthcare, you can do health analytics. If your passion is, third world, helping people in third world countries with clean water, there are third world applications of data analytics everywhere. I was invited on a mission, which ultimately got canceled for various reasons, to South Africa because we were building this really huge telescope in South Africa. Okay, I said that it's going to produce 5 exabytes of data every day. I mean, I can't even imagine what that is. It's just ridiculous. And so in order to handle this, it's built there because there's this huge plane where we're going to lay out like 100,000 radio telescopes. And so it's got to be a really big, flat, unused area of the planet Earth, and that's where it's going to be. Very dry, very flat, very large. In order to accommodate this, there needs to be really heavy computing infrastructure, internet infrastructure, data transfer bandwidth infrastructure, and so there's huge investment. I mean, we're talking billions of dollars investments going into the southern continent of Africa. And so this investment is actually creating new job opportunities for people to use data to improve their life, poverty, food, water, education, transportation, energy, you name it. And it's all about using data to improve our lives. So it's not about people becoming data analysts. You will be a data analyst, no matter what you do. Whether you're a sports announcer or a sports performer, an athlete, you're going to be dealing with digital information. So people are using digital information to change the world and improve their world. That's what it's all about. Okay, so follow your passion first, add on the analytics to make it complete for you, just like those students in that high school I told you about at the beginning. All right, they didn't go into that summer intern program thinking they were going to learn anything about basketball, I guarantee you. And they probably sure as heck didn't go into that summer intern program thinking they were going to learn a boatload of math. They probably would have never signed up. They just thought, this is cool, this is IBM, let's go see what they're doing. And next thing you know, it changed their lives. All right? They're graduating high school while their peers were not. All right, so let's be those people who graduate to changing the world. So what's the roadmap we need to get there? Okay, so we need, first of all, again, we need that sort of stateful experience. We need to understand that when I see this, I react this way. Okay, so in our algorithms, whether it's whatever business sector you're in, again, whether it's cybersecurity, healthcare, finance, whatever it is, understanding when I see a certain pattern of interest or a behavior interest, I have sort of almost like a trained behavior to respond, just like driving a car. I don't relearn to drive every time I move another inch forward on the street. Okay, so we have these patterns of behavior which we learn. So we have that, first of all, the design patterns that we say these are the ways which our business rules work. And then with that, you have what I call edge analytics, near field, and related entity analytics. So edge analytics says, okay, so we do have this data flood problem. We do have this combinatorial problem I talked to you about earlier today, where it's going to be impossible to assimilate all this knowledge and information. So look at only the pieces that matter to me. So if my washing machine is telling me I need more dish or wash powder, or my refrigerator is saying I need more margarine or milk, I don't care what the neighbor's refrigerator is saying. I don't care what the neighbor's washing machine is saying. I don't care what the neighbor's car is saying that it needs a tune-up. Okay, I care about my thing. So near field analytics says this is the sphere of influence that I care about. There's all this noise out here. There's all this data out here, but here are the things I care about. All right, so that means don't bring all that data back to a supercomputer and decide whether you should stop for that pedestrian who just stepped in front of your car. The decision is made at the point of data collection. Oh, stop now. Okay, a lot of things in life we do that, right? We overanalyze. We call it a paralysis of analysis. We can't have paralysis of analysis. We need to have edge analytics. The decision, the analytics happens at the point of data collection. That's locality in time. When it happens, we have the learning experience. Near field analytics, that is what matters to me is in my local sphere of influence. Again, I don't care about what's happening with the neighbor's house, the neighbor's car, the neighbor's refrigerator. Locality and geospace, that's another thing. Understanding how to extract geospatial information from a signal. A lot of things that you do on your phone can contain a geo footprint, a geo tag that says where you are when you have that interaction. So that's good, and that a lot of that data, metadata, is already there, whether you know it or not. You're already tagged your pictures and your experiences with where you were when it happened. Locality and geospace. So not just time and space, but in parameter space. That is locality and feature space, which we call related entity analytics. What else have I seen like this? What else has behaved this way? What else is going on like this? Okay, so it has to do with all the other characteristics and parameters and features describing what you're seeing in front of you. So all this stuff you can contribute to. People will pay big dollars for you to contribute to this. And at the end of the day, it's got to be agile. Again, you got to be like that car. You can't wait to calculate it and decide later whether to stop for that pedestrian in front. Same way in a business, you can't go back and decide, oh, we need to do this to our product after we had all this customer sentiment based upon a Super Bowl ad. Okay, maybe the Super Bowl ad was a catastrophic failure, and yet you've already purchased airtime for the next 10 weeks to re-show that Super Bowl ad, right? Oh, no, let's pull that before it happens again. Okay, so agile analytics, understanding in real time how to make better decisions. So sometimes we call that data ops. Okay, so the tight integration of your operation with your data collection. Sometimes it's called fail fast. That is, you learn quickly what the failure modes are so you don't repeat them. So that's an iterative process. Start simple. That's the minimal viable project. So one thing people a lot of times forget is, I'm going to try to do the hard thing first. No, try to do the easy thing first, okay? Okay, so you can do some, and then ultimately at the end of the day, we have these stateful learning systems. That is, it remembers where it's been and what it's done. And that's it. So last slide, like I mentioned, you can download all these slides here if you want to go walk through all the words a lot more slowly. I've put a bunch of images of some free books we have from my company. So we focus a lot on helping businesses, helping individuals, helping federal agencies, helping nonprofits, even helping sports teams do their analytics. So we have things all the way from helping individual people, like the Field Guide to Data Science, to actually businesses building analytics teams, which you can contribute to. So all that stuff is free download. It's all at boozallen.com, so I'm not advertising my business, but this is stuff that a lot of people spend a lot of time on creating. Again, it's free to anyone who wants to download it. I think it's just beautiful stuff. The one that's least beautiful is the 10 Signs of Data Science Maturity, because that's the one I co-authored, so that's the least beautiful one of all these. I say I'm published, but it's like a 9-page report, so it's not really a book, but people say, hey, will you do a book signing for us? Yeah, it's... anyway, so this, these are some guides that might help you in the journey, no matter where you are, whether you're just learning it or you're a vice president of a business in the room. Try that stuff out. And at the end of the day, follow me on Twitter, please. I live there. And we have this competition called Data Science Bowl every year. This year we had $1 million in prizes, which will be announced next week. This is going to be a really big deal, finding new early detections of lung cancer. And so $1 million of prizes to be awarded next week. Stay tuned to find out who's going to get it. Thank you very much.